and no one moves a limb, a muscle, when Camilla passes. And that was because they were angry with Camilla. They were furious. And not only that, Kate and William were angry too. And that anger, of course, Harry was angry, that anger went right through that small part of the congregation.
There are vaults that hold jewels, and then there are vaults that hold verdicts. What Prince William discovered inside one sealed palace chamber, a ring, a decision, and a denial, did not simply rearrange the hierarchy of royal jewelry. It rearranged the unspoken rules of who belongs to Diana's story and who will always stand outside it. If you want to understand why a single blue stone is shaking the monarchy from the inside, stay right here. And before this goes any further, make sure you subscribe, because what comes next is the part the palace never wanted spoken aloud. According to sources familiar with royal household procedures, Diana's sapphire engagement ring, the iconic oval blue stone surrounded by 14 diamonds, once placed on her finger in 1981 and later passed to Catherine by Prince William, had been drawn into a formal palace access review. These reviews, which govern which members of the royal family may handle, inspect, or officially interact with historic heirlooms, are rarely dramatic in their paperwork. But insiders suggest this particular review was anything but routine. The ring had reportedly been flagged under a broader examination of objects tied to Diana's legacy, and it is alleged that more than one party within the palace hierarchy had expressed interest in its handling. What happened next, according to those close to the matter, sent a ripple through the household that had not been felt in years. It is reported that a formal request for access to the ring was submitted from Camilla's office, framed allegedly as part of an inventory review. Palace insiders suggest the phrase was deliberate. An inventory review sounds administrative, it sounds neutral, but sources indicate that those who heard the request understood exactly what it was reaching toward. Camilla, now Queen Consort, had built her position carefully over the years. Present, official, yet the sapphire, according to those who watched events unfold, represented something she had never been able to fully enter, Diana's chapter of the royal story. And it is alleged that accessing the ring, even under procedural language, was an attempt to stand inside that chapter, if only briefly. But here is where the story turns. And the turn, according to palace sources, was not gradual. William, it is reported, moved with a kind of quiet authority that requires no raised voice and no public declaration. He is said to have made his position clear through the channels that matter inside a royal household, not through argument, but through instruction. Sources allege that the prince communicated through appropriate palace officials that Diana's ring was not available for access review by any party outside of his and Catherine's custodial authority. The message, by all unconfirmed accounts, did not arrive with anger, it arrived with finality, and that, palace insiders suggest, was what made it so powerful. Camilla's office reportedly received the formal response with the kind of quiet that follows an answer no one fully expected to be so absolute. The word that came back was denial. Not a delay, not a rescheduling, not a polite note suggesting better timing. According to sources close to the situation, the response to Camilla's access request was a clear refusal, and those who witnessed the moment say the Queen Consort understood immediately that the language around it was only covering what the action itself had already said. It is alleged that her expression did not betray drama. She did not respond with confrontation, but palace insiders claim the silence that followed her receiving that notice was its own kind of statement. She had spent years building legitimacy inside a family where Diana's shadow had never quite lifted, and now, according to unconfirmed accounts, a sealed vault door had drawn a line she was not permitted to cross. But what William discovered when he approached the vault himself is the part of this story that no official statement has addressed. According to sources, the prince entered the process of reclaiming formal custodial authority over the ring with the stillness of someone who had been preparing for a moment like this for a long time. He is said to have been accompanied by a senior aide, and palace insiders allege the atmosphere was controlled, deliberately controlled, because William reportedly understood that what he was doing was not simply securing a piece of jewelry. He was drawing the boundary between his mother's memory and the institutional machinery that surrounds it. when the ring case was reportedly transferred under his documented authority, sources suggest the moment was brief but absolute. There was no ceremony, there was no announcement, there was only the weight of what it meant, and the prince is alleged to have held the case for a moment longer than protocol required, as if grounding himself in the reality of what had just been protected. Catherine was not present in the vault chamber, according to reports, but those who know the couple well suggest her absence was never felt. The ring, as sources describe it, has always been carried by both of them, not as matching ambition, but as shared understanding. It is believed that William had spoken with Catherine before the access dispute reached its formal conclusion, and that she had offered the kind of steadiness he has come to rely on in moments that press against old grief. She did not, according to palace insiders, reach for the ring as a symbol of status. She is alleged to have understood it as something far more complicated, a visible grief, a public expectation, and a private promise she inherited, not because she sought it, but because the man she married had never stopped carrying it. And that is the layer beneath the denial that most reports have failed to name. This was not, according to those familiar with the palace dynamics, simply about a gemstone or access rights. It is alleged to have been about the question the monarchy has quietly refused to answer for decades: who holds the right to stand inside Diana's story, and who, regardless of rank, title, or official position, will always remain standing outside it. The Sapphire, palace sources suggest, became the place where that question could no longer be postponed. Camilla's request forced it into the open. William's response, allegedly, answered it without using a single public word. But there is a dimension to this story that goes even deeper, because the ring is not simply a ring. William reportedly told those close to him that Diana's sapphire had long since stopped being about jewelry, the stone that had been placed on his mother's hand as a fairy tale promise that had later been worn through heartbreak and then quietly passed to Catherine at the moment William proposed, had become something the prince describes, according to unconfirmed accounts, as irreducible. It cannot be audited, it cannot be inventoried, it cannot be treated as a palace object waiting to be catalogued among other palace objects, because it carries something that palace catalogues are not designed to hold. It carries a woman's life, her public pain, her private endurance, and the grief of a son who lost her before he was old enough to protect her. Sources suggest the prince has never spoken about the ring casually, even in private circles. Those who have observed him around it say there is a quality to how he handles the subject that is distinct from how he discusses other royal matters. It is not discussed, it is guarded, and when the access request reached him, when Camilla's office asked, however carefully worded, to be let inside that guarded space, sources allege the prince's response was immediate, internal, and unmistakable. The answer was no. It was always going to be no. Camilla's position inside the royal family has never been simple, and those who observe palace dynamics closely know better than to reduce it to one moment. She has fulfilled the role of queen consort with increasing public confidence. She has stood beside Charles through state events, Commonwealth visits, and the weight of a crown that arrived after a lifetime of complicated public perception. But the sapphire, according to unconfirmed palace accounts, has always been the symbol that sits outside the life she has built. It is alleged that she has never spoken about the ring directly in any documented public setting, because the ring is the one royal object that carries Diana's absence into every room it enters, and Camilla's presence inside those rooms has always been shadowed by that absence. The denial, it is reported, did not simply sting. It is alleged to have confirmed something the queen consort had long suspected, but never had stated so plainly. There are spaces within the monarchy where her official title carries full weight. There are spaces where it carries none at all. And it is believed that receiving that formal notice, the quiet official message that said her access request had not been approved, was the moment that distinction stopped being invisible. It had been given a name, it had been given a date, and it had been delivered in writing. But this story does not end with a closed vault, because what happened next, according to sources tracking the palace's internal response, was something William had not fully anticipated. The decision, once made and formalized, did not stay contained within household channels. It is alleged that details began to surface, slowly at first, through the kinds of background conversations that palace aides are supposed to prevent, but rarely can. And as those details circulated, the story took on a shape that was larger than any procedural record could contain. Word reached journalists, context was added, framing was applied, and by the time the broader picture began to emerge, according to media observers who tracked the reporting, it had become something the palace press office had no prepared language for. The country received it the way it receives anything connected to Diana, with the full weight of 27 years of grief still in the room. It is reported that public reaction was not whipped up by any single outlet or organized campaign. It arrived, sources suggest, the way emotion arrives when something touches a nerve that has never fully healed. People who had not thought about Diana's ring in years found themselves reading about vault access procedures and feeling something they could not entirely explain. The Sapphire had re-entered public consciousness not as news, but as memory. And memory, palace advisors have long understood, is harder to manage than any headline. Gatherings outside Kensington Palace, according to reports, were quiet rather than demonstrative. Small groups, photographs of Diana held without banners, a presence that said more through stillness than noise. Sources suggest palace security monitored the gatherings carefully, not because they appeared dangerous, but because the kind of silence that carries this much meaning has historically been harder for the monarchy to respond to than protest. It was mourning, dressed as recognition. It was the public deciding, without being asked, what the vault decision had meant and what it meant. According to observers who watched the reaction develop across social platforms and broadcast media, was this: Diana's son had stood between his mother's memory and the woman who had replaced her, and he had held the line. Camilla reportedly saw the front pages. It is alleged that the headline most widely shared, the blue stone on a dark background, with the words that reduced an entire palace process to 5 syllables, landed differently than the formal notice had. One was official, one was personal, but the front page was something else entirely. It was public, it was permanent, and according to palace sources, the Queen Consort understood that she was no longer simply managing a private denial. She was watching the country deliver its own version of the same verdict. She could not appeal to newspapers. She could not submit a counter-request. She could not soften the framing the way palace aides soften official language. The public had decided what the ring meant, and its decision did not include her. William, according to those who observed his response to the emerging coverage, did not look relieved in the way someone looks relieved after a victory. Sources suggest he looked relieved in the way someone looks relieved after carrying something heavy for a very long time and being allowed finally to put it down somewhere safe. He is alleged to have rejected the first draft of a palace statement because its language turned Diana's ring into an asset, a managed object with controlled messaging, rather than what it was. He reportedly requested wording that left room for the ring to mean what it had always meant: grief, not administration; legacy, not procedure. Charles, it is alleged, watched the reaction with the particular stillness of a man who signed an order expecting one outcome and received another. The king had, according to palace sources, approved the formal access ruling, believing it would resolve a household question quietly and without public consequence. Instead, it had done something larger. It had forced the monarchy to confirm, through official paperwork, what the public had always quietly believed: that Diana's memory was not palace property, and that certain pieces of her story had been entrusted to her son to protect, not to the institution to manage. Charles is alleged to have understood, watching the crowds outside Kensington and the front pages accumulate, that his signature had not settled access. It had admitted inheritance. What followed, according to sources inside the household, was not resolution in the traditional sense. There was no ceremony. There was no photographed reconciliation. There was no statement long enough to explain everything or short enough to seem unbothered. The ring returned to the protected custody of William and Catherine, and the palace fell into the particular quiet that arrives after an institutional decision has been overtaken by human meaning. Sources suggest that Camilla did not press the matter further, that there was a private understanding, unspoken, allegedly, as most such understandings inside the royal family tend to be, that the access question was finished, not because the request had been unreasonable on paper, but because the response had made clear where that paper ended and where something older and deeper began. Catherine, according to those familiar with her conduct throughout this period, carried the outcome the way she carries most things that touch on Diana, with quietness and without performance. It is believed she had never sought the ring as a statement. She had accepted it in 2010 as an expression of William's love and his private meaning, and she had worn it since then, understanding that it carried a weight she had not chosen, but had agreed to hold. Sources suggest she did not celebrate Camilla's denial. There was nothing to celebrate. A door had been closed, and behind it lay grief, not triumph. Catherine understood, it is reported, that protecting the ring was not the same as winning anything. It was simply honoring what had been trusted to her, and so the vault is sealed. The access has been formally resolved. Diana's ring, the blue sapphire that once held a fairy tale, then carried heartbreak, then passed quietly between the hands of a grieving son and the woman he chose to carry his life with, remains under the protected custodial authority of William and Catherine. Camilla's request has been answered, and the answer has been delivered in a way that leaves no procedural space for a second question. The public has added its own reading to the official record. The palace has issued its restrained statement, and the monarchy has arrived, perhaps for the first time in years on this particular subject, at something that resembles clarity. But what this story will not let anyone forget, not the palace, not the press, not the country, is what the ring has always been. Not a royal object, not an inventory item, not a neutral gemstone sitting in a vault waiting to be accessed and catalogued by whoever holds the appropriate title. It is, according to every person who has ever thought seriously about what Diana meant to the people who loved her and to the country that watched her, the most personal thing the monarchy has ever tried and failed to contain. William knew it, Catherine knew it, Charles has now been reminded of it, and Camilla has been shown, finally, where the boundary sits. The vault door is closed, the ring is protected, and Diana, through a stone, through a decision, through a son who refused to let the institution swallow what was personal, is still, somehow, making herself heard. If this story moved you, please like and subscribe. We will see you in the next one.